This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, I asked Joey about the weird things we hold on to, and Joey takes his favorite version of our show for a test drive.
Woo! Give me the Beach Boys to cleanse my soul. I want to get lost in your podcast. This is what Joey sounds like. And this is what an executive producer and real estate novelist, Jess Vander, sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess. I knew part of it. And I think both of the parts were Billy Joel.
Well, no, the first one is...
The second part was at
Hey
least
Google,
Billy
who sings
Joel.
Give Me the Beat Boys? Who does sing Give Me the Beat Boys? The Beat Boys. The Doobie Brothers.
Doobie Brothers.
Yeah.
A classic.
I thought it was Give Me the Beach Boys until I was like 14. I was like, they really like the Beach Boys. They wrote a whole song about how much they like the Beach Boys.
Like fans.
I mean, I like the Beach Boys also, I guess, but why do they like them so much? Oh, Beat Boys. Got it. Well.
Got it. Got it. Everybody has a song like that. There should be a name for the song that you were certain had a certain set of lyrics until you realized that you were deeply wrong.
Yeah. Well, Jess, do we have any housekeeping?
Yeah, some folks have reached out to us about, well, just as friends and whoever, about if we know of any resources, if we are interested in supporting humanitarian efforts in Ukraine. And as usual, we'll have that link in our show notes if you consider yourself one of those people. But I think that's it.
If you have topics you would like us to discuss outside of the Beach Boys, and or maybe we should do a show on the Beach Boys and Baroque pop.
We'll just need to add one additional person to have our 4-part harmonies.
That is true. Alex definitely can hit the bass notes.
Great. Our resident baritone.
I will be tenor? I don't know.
Really? I would have said you could be our soprano. But the fun type. A wee wee away. You know, like that.
Yeah,
but
like that.
A Beach Boys song.
Well, send us topics unless you want us to talk about Baroque fiction at criticalnonsense@sylvain.co or thisisnonsense.com. Right? Did I get those right?
Right. You got it. We really fly
Nailed it.
off the handles without Aaron. Or do we do this with Aaron?
I think we do it with Aaron, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But there's 3 of us. It's cycling. Anyways.
Yeah, okay.
We did it.
Anyway.
Jess, what do you got to talk to us about?
Okay, so when we're recording this, it's the Friday before Pi Day, which is Monday.
The Friday before Pi Day is such a beautiful phrase. It's like cellar door. The Friday before Pi Day.
Cellar door. Cellar door is nice. Cellar stair is maybe better than cellar door, but we're not worried.
Who said it? Was it Hemingway that said cellar door was the most beautiful phrase? What?
This is the moment where you wait for Joey to look this up. Here we go. Do 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 do. Here we Google. Nope. Still no result. Do 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 do. This is the longest Google search Alexa could have gotten this 18 minutes ago.
Alexa, C.S. Lewis, I think.
C.S.
No.
This is a terrible waste of time.
Cyrus Lauren Hooper.
Alex, cut this later.
Jeffrey Nunberg. Apparently it has a long history of a lot of people who think it is beautiful. So we can leave it at that. Cut it. We'll cut it in post. Fuck it, I'll do it live.
Cellar door, commonly understood to be a beautiful sounding couplet. Moving on.
Friday before Pi Day.
It's the Friday before Pi Day as we record this episode. And to get myself in the headspace
What is Pi Day?
of Pi Day, exactly what is Pi Day? It is 3.14, March 14. That's the first 3 digits of pi, the mathematical constant for a circle, and yet it is not. 2 pi is the circle constant. And so I was watching this video from longtime video blogger and nerd Vi Hart about how, quote unquote, wrong pi is, because why do we use 2 pi to be the thing that represents a circle when there is something that represents 2 pi? It's something called tau. And you don't have to multiply or divide. It's just simpler to use the full thing instead of some divisor of the thing. And it was interesting to me because nobody knows what tau is. Some might not even know what pi is, but definitely more people know what pi, pi is over tau, tau. And this just like started me on this train this whole week of random things that don't make sense yet have permeated the living universe around me and also my own universe. Like, I was watching Ryan play this video game where there is this town and there is this sun emperor, and their whole town revolves around worshiping the sun, and the leader says something like, "Thank the sun," in passing. And I thought to myself, thank the sun. The sun is so much more worth thanking in my own personal experience as a not particularly religious being than thanking God, even though I say phrases like thank God or oh my God all the time baked into my vernacular. And it's just another example of a thing, though vastly different from the universe of mathematical constants, that I go about my life doing without explanation or maybe even good reason when there could be a better thing. And so my question for us today is, why do we keep doing things that don't make any sense at all?
My first reaction is sort of like distinguishing between what makes logical sense and what just makes sense because it is, right? You know, like your point about like so much of it feels cultural, or sometimes it's like easier to understand. Also, apparently we should be having pies on June 28th, which maybe we just have 2 Pi days. Yeah, maybe we just
I had this thought of, wait, everybody eats pie on Pi Day when actually they should be eating pie on Tau Day, which is 6/8, right? Psh, psh, mind's blown.
I don't know that it's the same thing, but I recently had a moment. I was talking to Julie at the company, she was born in Spain, but her family is Dutch. And she was like, "Oh, is it raining out right now?" And I was like, "Oh, it's spitting a little bit." And then I was like, "What?"
Ew.
Like that is like a common phrase, but I was like never thought about it. I was like, the word for this type of precipitation is spitting. And then when I was talking to someone where I was being more cognizant of whether like my idioms, because English is not her first language, would make sense, all of a sudden I was like, that doesn't, why are we calling it spitting? And then I like started looking it up, and it's like a phrase that is common in British English, and I think also in New England, potentially, maybe for proximity to Britain. I have no idea. And I was like, I've just been saying spitting my whole life to mean like the intermittent, like little bit of rain with like big raindrops that happen. And like it sent me down sort of a similar rabbit hole. And I think a lot of it has to do with just, you know, like things that stick because they're easier or fit into like weird ways in which our brains work, right? Like base 10 versus base 12, right? Like within numbers, like we use base 10 and sort of bailed out from there. Like the decimal system, right? Like using 100 as sort of the basis. Oftentimes people come back to the idea like we have 10 fingers and 10 toes and it makes sense, but base 12 is more logical because there are more divisors within it, or however mathematicians might talk about it, but you can divide 12 by 6, by 3, by 2, and so it can be broken up more easily, where you can only divide 10 by 5 and 2. And so like a lot of things don't necessarily make logical sense, but they just fit in the way that we see the world.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of math, like the metric system is, for me, the answer, and for so many, the answer.
Our Spanish sound engineer is nodding his head
like,
vigorously.
Yes. I think that, in fact, brings up to me another facet of this, which is related to, barriers to entry, or how difficult it is to surmount change. That I got more comfortable with the metric system because when I was measuring little sticks of wood in high school, centimeters were the base of the rules that I was building against, and therefore I became very tangibly acquainted with the metric system, and then it only made sense. But I also think that this topic, or this idea, is interesting and a little bit both similar and different to some of the things that I brought to the show for the last couple of episodes, where I brought a topic first on eating disgusting candy and then scrolling dumb Instagram, even though it's super boring. And now there's just like this constant onslaught of stuff that can't be explained. And yet this, to me, feels like it's a different flavor yet again of there is a reason, like you said, like there is some explanation somewhere, and it's interesting to see what endures. Also, how difficult it is to make any shifts, even when there's a really obvious alternative, because of the staying power of certain ideas or philosophies.
Yeah, it's interesting when sometimes there are things that are easier to do in some capacity, but more difficult to spread. I'm thinking about, I got introduced to this idea of songlines. Have you ever heard of songlines?
No, what's that?
So it's this idea, I think I encountered it in a Neil Stevenson book maybe. But it's basically like a map that Aboriginal people or First Nation people of Australia like had songs to like guide you through landmarks across like the bush and the deserts and things like that.
Wow.
And so if you knew
That's
the
cool.
song, you could get from like one place to another place. And there's something about that where on one level, it's much easier for an individual to like store and maintain knowledge that would allow you to track, but it's also like more difficult to transfer potentially, right? Like you could hold a number of song lines in your head and be able to like easily navigate around. But like a map is more effective potentially to like, you can pass it off to someone else and they can pull up the construct, and they may not be able to navigate without the map. The map is like more vulnerable to be like ruined or whatever, but is more easy to spread. And so like or there's like another idea of like dead reckoning, which who knows, maybe we've spoken about this on the show before, but it's like using cardinal directions at like the 16th breaking of cardinal directions. So like north by northwest, south by southeast, like where you've broken the compass rose into 16ths. instead of using left and right, because the compass rose is not about your personal orientation to things. It is a constant orientation to things between you and me. If we're in the same room, an object, I don't have to like switch my orientation to your orientation when communicating to you about where that object is. But like, so it's like a more effective system, but it's like requires you to like use that system so much over time to be able to like develop the skill to use it. And so like in both of these instances, it feels like systems that would potentially be more effective if you like had a song line around like getting around your neighborhood or something like that, or if you use Dead Reckoning to be able to communicate with each other, but they're like, just because they're more logical doesn't mean they're more effective in like how we interact with each other as like society.
Yeah, I mean, this is also speaking to something that we've talked about recently of how it was that Chicago was able to develop its whole urban plan anew because of the Great Chicago Fire. They basically had the chance to do it the right way because they had this really remarkable and uncommon blank slate. And it is interesting to think of things like that where not always in physical infrastructure, but in mental inroads, there are certain things that just have got such staying power that unless for some external reason, wipe of some kind, it would be really hard to shift things over, even if it makes a ton more sense.
Yeah, there's in technology, sometimes this comes up when people talk about like entrenchment within particular like technological systems, where often people will be like, an individual product is markedly not as good, but is easier to use because of how it's integrated. So like Microsoft versus Slack, right? Microsoft Teams is, I haven't had to use it. I've only used the video chatting thing and had a lot of problems with it.
Example. Yeah.
No, but Microsoft Teams, like I think universally is just like the UX is less effective. It is not as beautiful to use. Like it is just an inferior product by, even if we just said 20%, right? Like it is 20% not as good as Slack or other chat services, but it's integrated with people's email and it's integrated with their documents and it's integrated with their calendars and all these other things. And so it just makes it easier to use the system. And so people will use it because it's easier, not because it's better.
Yep.
And, Slack had put out like a big full page ad in the New York Times when Microsoft Teams announced that they were launching like tongue in cheek, like this is going to be hard. Good luck. We're better than you, whatever. And then within a few years, Microsoft Team had like 6 times the user base that Slack did or something like that. And it sort of shows that sometimes the easier thing becomes the thing we do, not necessarily the better thing.
Yeah. Or almost the opposite. Like when you were talking about the songlines, that was so interesting. And in a way, like maybe even the more beautiful method of navigation and the idea that, maybe a map is now more effective and usable by more people. A Kindle is more convenient than lugging a bunch of books when you're headed anywhere to read. And so then the beautiful thing gets lost. It's almost like the other side of maybe there, instead of maybe a better thing, maybe there's just an elegant thing that isn't used because something is easier or more efficient.
Yeah, I mean it's the same thing with like dialects or accents, right? Like arguably it is more interesting if more people had I mean, I don't know whether that's true or not. Like you could probably from like a linguistics perspective or something be like communication is less effective and so therefore it's not as good, but there is something I always find extremely beautiful about different people's idioms and turns of phrase and different styles of pronunciation, and those seem to be like going away as a product of like, you know, shared media and like more mobility of people and things like that. But I like the idea, like I really want to learn Dead Reckoning, and I'm like never going to do it because, you know, if someone's like, have you seen my wallet? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's to your northeast. They're going to be like, what?
Wait.
Is that left or right? You know, like I'm never going to be able to use that thing, even if I'm like, it just feels like more effective and more beautiful and like is compelling to me as an individual, is like ineffective in any utility. It would be like I just decided that I'm going to start sending all of my emails via typewriter or something like that.
Although the act of typewriting has its unique joys. There's something even in the process of, I mean, I think it would be difficult for folks from the States, not from a culture of, what's it called? Dead Reckoning?
Yeah.
Dead?
That like at any given moment you are like oriented to the cardinal directions. And so
the universal constant.
Yeah, you basically are like able to track it without thinking about it because everyone is you're maintaining the compass in your head.
Yeah, so earth centrist, Joey. The world doesn't revolve around the earth.
Obviously.
So, can I wrap this up?
Yeah, I think we're at your wrap up corner, but I don't know where you're going with this one. I don't know if I can wrap it up.
I don't know if I can either. I think it's made me realize is that there are actually so many of these that are kind of fun to think about, from language and idiomatic terms of phrase to weird math stuff that we use in our day-to-day, or orientation to literally anything. This cup that I have in my hand, my left hand, all of these little bits are kind of just the magical staying power of developing ideas and trying to communicate them. And some of them are bad, and that doesn't mean they don't stay. And some of them are great, and that doesn't mean they do.
I feel like what's interesting is that there is potentially less static staying power than historically there was. Like I'm going to be real honest with you. I don't even know what this is, but I know that like the example we've been looking at like schools for Emerson and things like that, is she like is gonna have to prepare to go to pre-K, and you have to like apply for public schools and all of this. And we saw a thing where they're like, we teach Singapore math. And I was like, what is Singapore math? And it's like, it is a more effective, creative way to like learn math. And I was like, are we changing math again? And my teacher is a fourth grade teacher, and she's like the box method and like all of these other things. And I'm like, who knows? Maybe Tau will have its day in the sun. Thank the sun. Tau may get its day.
I want that. I think it's okay sometimes if things change for the better.
Sometimes you're really soft. It is okay. Sometimes maybe
on occasion.
Don't change anything. Actually, I don't like it.
Maybe don't change it if it's beautiful, but also that's an argument to be stubborn and stuff. So let's change math and other useful things.
Nailed it.
I did great the first time. Why you gotta interrupt? Gosh. Okay. No, I like this point. This is great. Carry on.
All right. Well, we're done.
And now for a special segment called Joey's Favorite Podcast.
Joey's favorite podcast.
A segment where Joey does the version that he wishes this podcast could embody, where instead of open-ended questions with long and interesting conversations. We just cut straight to the chase and close it off. Joey, take it away.
I don't know what to do with this setup. I was just going to share a funny story with you. So I came across something recently that said TikTok is just dramatized, Twitter is just screen capped Tumblr. And this is like this idea that comes up online quite a bit. Like Tumblr was the like progenitor of like a lot of what internet culture is today. People will say things like, if you were on Tumblr from 2010 to 2013, you got a degree in psychology, or you got like X, Y, and Z things. Like a lot of people go back to that as like this interesting formative thing. And I'm sure if at that time you went back, people would be like, actually, GeoCities was, you think Tumblr is new, GeoCities is actually new. But the joke in this case, GeoCities was like early blog site in like the era of like MySpace and things like that, like where I think you had to like maintain more HTML to keep your page up. And but the joke
like
in
the next door of Internet Explorer.
Yes.
Okay.
So the joke in this case was like a series of things that were getting referenced of someone on TikTok was sharing something about like what is essentially like fan fiction of what if the narrator in Billy Joel's The Piano Man was the only one that didn't realize that he was playing in a gay bar. And then someone like screen capped something where someone on Twitter had said that like a few years prior, and someone else had a screen cap of someone who had said it on Tumblr even before. But it was all this same like fan fiction theory about Billy Joel just being in a gay bar and not realizing it. And like I was just laughing at the jokes to myself like one morning, and it's it's like it's just people being like, the Tumblr captions are like, who's gay? Paul, the real estate novelist who never had time for a wife. And probably Davey, who's still in the Navy and probably will be for life. And it's just like people going on these ideas where people are like, I sit at the bar they put bread in my jar and say, man, what are you doing here? And I was just like cackling. And so I sent it to my family. My dad and my mom are like big Billy Joel fans. Their wedding song was Just the Way You Are by Billy Joel. And my siblings are all like, they start laughing at it and like citing lyrics from the song and like playing into the joke. And my dad's like, is this real? You guys are crazy. That's like, he didn't get the fact of
no
like, we're just,
way.
Yeah. We're just
that
like
cannot be what the song is about.
Yeah. He's like, what are you guys talking about? You're crazy. Billy Joel was not in Hempstead, Long Island in 1973 playing at a gay bar. You guys are crazy. And I was like, no, that's not the joke. Apparently he called my sister later and was like, were you guys serious? Like, not upset, just like confused.
I just thought he knew Billy Joel, Joe. He thought he knew.
And should I go into a question now on Joey's show?
Yeah.
It's
Joey's show.
What I was thinking about was two ideas. There's two questions on Joey's show.
Great. On Joey's show, there are no rules.
One, I got to make it a closed-ended question because it's Joey's show. Is youth culture always the same, because all of these jokes are just like eras in which, like millennials were like new and crazy young kids thinking up weird ideas, and then Gen Zs are like new and crazy young kids thinking up new ideas, but maybe all the ideas are just the same and youth is never changing.
Oh, and there isn't a second one because it's
I have a second
Joey's
one.
show. Oh, yes, but also give credit to the youth for coming up with new ideas. It just might take a second to make its way down the pipeline.
There we go.
That one probably just was like a slow flow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I never got it in 2011.
Exactly. It just took a while. So
it took me until 2022 to get the joke from
to get that joke.
2011.
Exactly right. That just says, that doesn't say anything wrong with youth culture. It just says that you are distant from it now.
I mean, I was in all these places, but maybe the joke was just a slow burn. Maybe the joke wasn't ready for the bright lights until 2022 when Billy Joel is at the prime of his career.
Right. And someone very well may bring it back up with some incredible timing, and then kudos to them because they're creating new humor with their incredible timing. So actually, thanks to whomever shared that thing that you saw wherever it appeared.
The other thing I was thinking about was there was this I think it was a TED Talk years ago, back when TED was just getting on the scene, about sort of like collective intelligence increasing, like our ability over time generationally to be able to, I'll find it in a minute, but our ability to generationally over time contend with more abstracted and complicated concepts as a collective. It was basically like the mean intelligence of society was increasing, and it was making me think about this idea of, when young people go on to Facebook and like see things that their parents are like laughing at or telling jokes or interacting with, and they're like, what a funny joke, and everyone's like, there's like no comedic structure to that, like it's not funny. I was thinking about this.
Standards. Physical comedy is not interesting.
Yeah. Or it would be like, I went to the store and they had no toilet paper, and everyone's like, no! Ha ha ha, like, man, what a good one.
No.
And it made me think about like this frame of a joke, right? Like this absurd counterfactual, which my siblings are closer to my age. We're like, I get what's happening. Like we're playing a game where we're pretending this is real, but no one here believes like this is actually how Billy Joel wrote this song whenever he wrote it. But my dad was like, what are you talking? Like, I don't get this like joke construct. And it made me think about the idea of like, my dad is not a stupid guy. It's just like, he's
sounds
like,
you're saying something, a kid.
He is
that
a sack of rocks.
Wow.
He's not going to listen to this. But it just made me think about that idea of like these like the sort of construct of jokes becoming more and more complicated and like self-referential and sort of like eating their own tails a little bit, and that maybe is a demonstration of that idea of like people over time being able to like contend with more interesting and abstract concepts.
I don't buy it.
You don't buy it?
I mean, I could see why someone would have that hypothesis and have many reasons to back up, the amount of the proportion of mental labor to physical labor today than what you could compare to a century ago, for example. Like we do more thinking now than we used to. So I could understand why someone could argue that we're collectively smarter than we once were. And maybe there's also a distinction between like our average intelligence versus our collective intelligence. Like, are there things that we all just are in on? And so we can have more nuanced things that we are all in on instead of having to sort of strip it back because it used to be that you just couldn't have everybody on that same page type of thing. But I feel like this example is too specific to fulfill the burden of proof for me because it might just be like your dad just didn't get the joke. But I don't disagree with the idea, like the general hypothesis, and I just don't know if this is it.
Yeah. It is called, I found the video. It's from James Flynn. It's called The Flynn Effect. And it's basically about how each generation scores higher on IQ tests than the generation before it, that we're actually getting smarter or are thinking differently. We'll share it. But cool. that idea, like some of it obviously is like nutritional and environmental, like forces are improving to a point where you're just able to develop more effectively. And some of it is also around like the things that we're learning and earlier and improvements, right? I think if I remember correctly, like in this, you think about the ways in which examples like people play piano more effectively now, like what were like the greats or sort of masters of piano from the 18th century. Like there are tons of people who can play the piano today better than them because you're sort of like building on the backs of greats. And so,
or these silent piano players of yore who didn't have YouTube to show their skills.
Exactly.
Goodness. I also
or tell their jokes.
a little aside to this point. Your point about people getting smarter and collectively being able to score higher on IQ tests. I also just had the thought, wow, I wonder what the global mean hat size is, and if it has also grown, if our brains have grown, our heads just bigger everywhere.
Ballooning.
And wouldn't that be hilarious?
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Boy. Yeah, well.
Except for my dad, apparently. Tiny head. Not true.
This not poor soul. We have never met. I apologize on behalf of your son for his
Jess,
harsh
that brings
words.
us to Jess's wrap-up corner of Joey's favorite podcast.
No, I don't wrap your show. This is not how this works. Joey adds some thoughts about things and we discuss them.
The internet had jokes and kids are always the same except for they're smarter.
This is your version of the show where I say something and then you're like, wait, another thought. And then we open it here.
Well, this was a unmitigated disaster. Joey's favorite podcast is the show we shouldn't do. And now we all know it. And that's the wrap-up corner.
What's the best wrapping material? I would say plastic
Parchment.
wrap is not it.
Parchment paper.
Parchment paper has utility going for it.
Foil. Whatever, construction paper. What is the brown paper?
That's craft paper.
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by Spitting Bars, an open-air beer garden with live music for rainy days.
As always, we'd like to thank executive producer and turtle slapper, Jess Vander.
That sounds so rude. I love turtles. We'd also like to thank sound engineer and fan of the metric system, Alex Contel.
We'd like to thank our programming coordinator and tiger dancer, DJ Lil Tiger, Les Jacobs.
And thanks to our production help and our Beach Boys, Sarah Gilbert and Norm Estridge.
As always, thank you, Sorry, Lynn.
Sorry, Lynn.
Special thanks.
Special thanks
Jokes.
to Turtles. How
And
could
turtles.
you drag them like that?
Jokes
Goodness.
about turtles.
Turtles. I like to thank North and South and East and West.
At first, I was like, are you thanking Kim and Kanye's daughter, North? But it was just the cardinal directions. That's where we... Just. Dead Reckoning. I'd like to thank Dead Reckoning. If you are capable of Dead Reckoning, please write us a letter because I want to see it.
I like to thank that for sounding like some rock metal band name.
Yeah.
I would like to thank Vi Heart's video for celebrating Tau and math.
Math.
Yep. Mathematics.
That's another
Do you
one.
say maths?
Everyone, like Canadians and Europeans, say maths.
Maths.
Germs are from Germany.
Maths.
That
makes sense.
I think I did it. Thanks, Billy Joel.
Yeah, I think that's done. Well,
We only
thanks for
sing
joining us.
80s
This one was
Joel.
weird.
It was weird.
Billy Joel.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Billy Joel. A classic gem.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
bye.
bye. See you later.
See ya.
Love you, mean it. Ah. I was asking my brother what his Twitch account is, and he told me it's Turtle Slapper, which was a name I gave him in like a Halo, like when he was like 7, and apparently it stuck.